Charting Toward Intimacy covers mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Charting Toward Intimacy covers mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Hey there, welcome to Charting Toward Intimacy, where we're expanding the natural family planning conversation. I'm your host, Ellen Holloway. Today I'm joined by Peggy Murray. Peggy is a wife and mother. She and her husband teach the Symptothermal Method, and they work with many engaged and married couples, talking with them about natural family planning, theology, the body, and more. Peggy is joining us to give us some tips and advice on talking to our daughters and sons about natural family planning. So let's get started. All right. Well, welcome, Peggy. Welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to have you on today and talking about our topic. So let's just jump in. Talking to our daughters about NFP. Now, I have zero knowledge in this subject because my daughter is all of 11 months old. But, just from the get-go, when do you think parents should begin talking to their daughters about NFP?
That is a great question. And I'm so glad you're doing this podcast on talking to your daughters about NFP. Parents as primary educators are the best people to talk to their children about natural family planning. So thank you for including this in a parental way. I think a lot of parents struggle with this issue, and when is key.
Yes, absolutely.
So if you are already speaking to your children about their bodies and the gift of their body, then this becomes a topic that's very fluid and already something that you can incorporate into later discussions about the beauty of how their body works, especially young women.
Oh, absolutely.
So if it's done from an early age, even just when they start asking questions about why parts of their body are there, why certain parts of their body do certain things, and to be able to keep it in a pure level so that you're always answering questions that they've only asked. And you keep the topic present for them. To go into any more depth than they're not asking for can sometimes be a danger. So always keep it relevant to the child. And Then when they reach a certain age, maybe the prepubescence or even puberty, introducing them to materials that continue to support them in their gradual changes so that they're aware of what's going to happen. And mom and dad have already talked about this. More mom maybe than dad, just because of they're feeling comfortable with and dad not so comfortable maybe.
Yeah, I can get that.
Yeah.
Well, I love that idea of just it being this seamless flow of explaining our bodies, how our bodies work from the get-go, from when they start asking questions, to just flowing perfectly into that prepubescence or puberty age, and it not feeling like this shock of, okay, let's sit down and have the talk.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, every time that you've asked questions about these things, we've talked about them and we've answered them in language that's appropriate to whatever age they are when they're asking those questions. And it becomes a very natural conversation.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's what children long for, the truth, so that you can reveal it to them, as well as the necessary information that's age appropriate at the age that they are. Absolutely. Anything more is too much for them, and they will be your guide. So allow them to lead you. Children are always the best guides, and sometimes parents overanalyze, overthink, and over assert themselves. So I encourage parents to leave their purity intact and allow them to let you know when they're ready providing the information that is necessary in certain circumstances. There's lots of great publishers out there, especially Theology of the Body Institute or Tabor Life or other things that have children's books or tween books or whatever you might need.
Sure. Yeah. And I've seen,
to have an understanding of their body and the gift
yeah,
their body is.
I've seen those beautiful sets of books. I know the Theology of the Body Institute has one, and it starts like in kindergarten, and it's
Yes.
a book kind of based on the theology of the body and allows for great conversation and language that is really tailored towards the age of the child at that time that they're reading the book, and can allow for that natural flow of conversation, kind of talking theology of the body, talking about the gift of their body, and then that can really lead into having a very natural conversation about natural family planning when it comes time.
Right. I think it does need that foundation of theology of the body. I had a young woman tell me that, NFP without TOB is just Catholic birth control. And so I use that in a lot of information that I provide for engaged couples or married couples or even teenage girls, that this really is a deeper understanding of what your body, the beauty of how it's created, and also the appreciation that God wrought in our hearts to be able to share that with our future spouse, or to understand it in a deeper way.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. I like it because, I think a lot of times the idea of NFP being Catholic birth control comes up, and it's like, no, it's not. It's really not. But yes, coupling natural family planning with TOB as well as additional teachings of the church is what takes it away from this birth control mentality and this, it's just a way to space children. Well, no, it's not. It's actually a way to learn about your body. It's a way to build communication in your marriage. And it's a way to do many more things than just space children.
Right.
Awesome. So from a personal level, we were kind of talking all in hypotheticals of, well, basically prepubescent or puberty age. What exactly does that mean? When did you and your husband start talking to your daughters about NFP?
Well, kind of the same way that I was just outlining for you. For her, we didn't have some of the great books by Ashmore and the TOB Institute, etc., that we're now able to provide for my 7-year-old daughter.
Sure.
With my 27-year-old daughter, those weren't necessarily available, but we did have certain things that we were able to provide when she was a tween, and also other curriculum that we, established once she became a teenager, always keeping the conversation open and available. So it was always present there and a part of it. And then we have had other opportunities to have her exposed to theology of the body classes, as well as youth groups, other things. So it's almost a progression that builds on itself. And then once I was trained in the method, then I made sure that they were the first young ladies that learned the method.
Sure.
So that was 8 years ago. So my daughter was able to learn from me after learning about natural family planning and learning about how our body is created and how beautifully it's made, and then establishing that for her.
Fantastic. Well,
so it was better that I'd already had a method to be able to teach her.
Sure.
But I love how on your podcast you do speak about the other methods. So for everyone to be able to feel comfortable with learning about more, it's important for her to do that. So she's learning another method now. She's preparing for marriage. All those things are only going to benefit her in the future, and I think it's wonderful. I'm thankful to God.
Absolutely. Well, and I think what you're saying is so key here is it's not just a one-time discussion when they're 13 years old or when they're
No.
10. It's a door that's always open, a conversation that's consistently happening. Maybe NFP doesn't come into the conversation until a young girl reaches puberty, but that conversation about our bodies and what a gift they are, and that we should learn about how they work, and that's healthy to learn about how our bodies work, just leads seamlessly into having that conversation. And so it's almost like you can't even really pinpoint when you probably first talked to your daughter about NFP, because it was just this ongoing conversation. That's beautiful.
Absolutely. And that when you had asked originally, okay, so when did you do that? There wasn't a moment where, okay, we sat down and we did this, because that would make it awkward for everyone.
Right.
But it was always like in the background of every conversation that we had. And we had youth group meetings here, and we had discussions here, and we had great support with Endow or mother and daughter things. So it was always there, always something that she was allowed to feel comfortable with and approach. Now, I have to say too, and to allow other parents to have a safe space, is to say that there isn't a perfect way of doing it. And I do not claim to be perfect about anything, although I try to be perfect, and that's one of my flaws. And so my poor children have had to suffer through it. But I just kept trying, and it's a prayerful thing. So
Yes.
I encourage moms not to beat themselves up. I can't say that I've done it perfectly, and I continue to struggle with making sure I'm doing it the way God wants. So allow yourself that freedom to accept your weaknesses, and God can work with the talents of our failures too. Our failures are talents as well.
Absolutely.
So.
One of the things you said in there it made me think back to a memory from my childhood. You were saying, it's not just something where you sit down and you just start talking about it, because it would be pretty awkward. I remember when my mom sat me down and we talked about, hey, you're going to have a period soon, and this is going to be what it is, and this is how it's going to feel. And I cried after this conversation I had with my mom, because it was I was totally blindsided by it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, what's going on?
Wow.
Yeah. And I was probably about 11, maybe 12. I was probably 12 or 13, but, that made me really uncomfortable, because it was very new, and it wasn't a conversation we had throughout growing up. And so I love the idea of just having that door open, answering the questions as they come about, and really trying to make it an ongoing conversation. Awesome.
Right.
So when would you say that a young woman should start charting, or maybe should learn a specific method? When do you think would be a good time for a young woman to do that?
I don't think, again, I'm going to defer to the child, the young adult or the teenager or whomever. I mean, once they start charting, I don't think you want to start throwing a method at them. They want to feel comfortable in all these changes that are happening, right?
Sure.
So let them decide when they're going through these kinds of things. You want to mention, as much as you're able to communicate, and using other materials as well, to let them know the changes that their body are going through, so that they feel confident and comfortable that this is something that they can accept and adapt to. Your story just kind of reiterates that for all moms out there. And then let them know, I can help, or if you'd like to learn, or if you want more information about learning about the different days that you're going to cycle or going to have mucus or those kinds of different changes
Right.
that are going on in your body monthly, I can help you with that.
Sure.
There's this change too that goes on with women and mothers, young women and mothers, daughters and mothers, that we have to reverence as well. It's a different relationship than that with sons. I have more sons than I have daughters, and God is brilliant. He just knows things better. And I think that to come across as saying, okay, you want to start charting? I can show you how to start charting, to my daughter Sheila or my daughter Claire, I would have turned them off completely. And they would have been like, Mom, I don't think so. And I have to appreciate that. I know that I would have done that if my mom did that for me. So
right.
you really have to allow your daughter to make those changes and accept it and be there for her to be able to answer any questions. I'm always here if you have any questions. I gave materials to my older daughter because she is a reader, and she would love to just see visuals, see pictures, and then come and ask me later when she was comfortable. So, I do that, and then, we talk about it and try not to make her feel awkward or just, correct her, those kinds of things, so that it wasn't, a learning opportunity. So
sure,
it's always good just to allow them to come to you and provide the information if they want it, to give them materials or free space to talk to you. But it makes it much more conducive towards later conversations if it's not something that's forced.
Absolutely. And, I think too, I heard a great idea of just there's different levels of quote charting, right? You could fully chart a full method, right? If you're doing the symptothermal method, you've got your temperature and your mucus sign and sensation and whatever other parts that you're charting. But there's also a much more simplified version of just marking on a calendar when your cycle begins and, just noticing the length of it. And that is a really great place to start for a young woman, right? Because it's not necessary for them at this point to understand all of the different signs and what they all mean, because that might be way overwhelming. Right. And especially if mom comes and says, hey, I'm going to teach you all these crazy things. It's like, no, thanks, mom.
Right.
But
that's it.
Just saying, hey, mark on this calendar, and that can help in just kind of understanding like maybe how long her cycle usually is, and can kind of help her adjust and see when her period might come again and just become more comfortable with it. I know I started doing that when I was in high school, and it was literally just marking, what day my period started and ended. And that helped me so much just become more familiar with my body. And this was before I knew anything about NFP. I was just doing it because other friends were doing it. I don't exactly know why, but
brilliant. I think you answered the question better than I did. That's awesome.
Okay. So pivoting a little bit, what do you think about talking to boys or talking to your sons about natural family planning?
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know if you're familiar with Teen Star, but
yes.
I was trained in Teen Star, and they do have a male component. And it's helpful, but I think, again, what's lacking in some of the Teen Star approach is the theology of the body. So to be able to express, what your body's going through, the different levels of hormone, et cetera, is important. And also to be able to reverence what's going on in the female body, so that when they do approach any vocation, whether it be to marriage or the priesthood, they're aware of what each woman is called to in motherhood, whether that's, physical motherhood or spiritual motherhood.
Absolutely.
So it's a beautiful opportunity to express to the young men, again, with the, like you said, coupling or just with the foundation of theology of the body, so that they do have a resource and that underlying knowledge and appreciation of how they were beautifully created. So there is no confusion over the way that their bodies work in conjunction with the way the opposite the body of the opposite sex works, so that
Absolutely.
they come together in that marital embrace in the future.
Right. And having a base in theology of the body can just help, with so many things beyond just NFP, what we're talking about, but having an understanding of the marital embrace and why marriage is created, having an understanding of intimacy and sexual relations, and also having an understanding of, their themselves and the opposite sex just around them and their friends, and really understand. I mean, there's so many different things that theology of the body touches into, and having that foundation can just be momentous in
Absolutely.
someone's life. Yeah.
And I think that with that kind of foreknowledge, it gives it an appreciation too, that unfortunately, if you're looking at any kind of secular approach, can strip away anything that would talk about the beauty of it, rather than
Right.
The mystery too. There's a mystery behind that femininity that unfortunately we've kind of lost in our culture today. And the more we can encourage that,
the better.
the more I think so. I think so for our culture, and I think for women as well as for men.
Well, and something I think we can definitely agree on is your secular school, their sex ed program, not going to cut it.
Right. Absolutely.
It will not cut it. Like, you need to have this conversation.
Yeah. If not, that's the thing. And that parents need to definitely be their child's advocate and take a hold of what they might be exposed to in the future. You don't want that coming from a stranger or a good friend, or even a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You do want you to be the primary person, and you receive the grace from God to be able to do that. Do not discredit your ability to be able to share the beauty of this teaching with your child, because
right.
Well, and you had that grace.
Yeah, you touched on that earlier of, no one is perfect. No parents are perfect. No mom is perfect. But it is about continually having prayer and conversation with God and asking for those graces to have these conversations, because they're not easy and they might feel uncomfortable. But asking for that grace, letting God come into your heart, letting Holy Spirit give you the words, makes these conversations so much easier, because it's not you, it's not what you're saying, it's what God wants you to share.
Right. And feel confident in that too. Feel confident.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So what kind of suggestions do you have for young women, teens and young adults, to talk to their peers about NFP?
This is a great question, and I'm so glad you're asking that. I'm sure it is a challenge, because you don't want to, as great as your first experience with your friend Yolanda.
Yes.
I forget. I'm sorry. You started talking about NFP in a coffee shop, I think it was, correct?
Yes. And it was so random, and I have never had that.
That is random, Ellen.
Before.
That is not going to happen.
And it was amazing.
That's awesome. That's a grace-filled moment. But
right.
You can't do that during a play date.
Yeah.
Do you use NFP? It's just not going to happen.
Right.
So I think, again, it has to be at the right time, just like approaching any of your children or anything else. It has to be at the right time, and asking for the grace to be able to do that. So for those friendships where you're pretty close already, you might have already spoken about it and maybe already shared how you don't want to use contraceptives because you're trying to be green and you're trying to be healthy, and you want to make sure that you're protecting your body for the future, whether it be for your spouse or whatever. You just want to keep it healthy.
Right.
So sharing those things with good friends is a wonderful approach. And the timing, again, has to be when it's brought up and when it's discussed, rather than, next time you sit down with a friend for coffee and say, hey, let's talk about your birth control. That's like the worst thing too, if you're in a gynecologist's office and that's the first thing they're going to do. It's like,
man.
Oh no, here comes the question. And I've had it a few times, and I finally found a wonderful doctor that understood and appreciated.
Oh, that is
finding a wonderful doctor is wonderful. But so,
yeah.
And then a friend that wants to hear your insight,
right,
is good too. So you have to really read them and read when they're ready, and share it when you can. Sometimes enthusiasm is the best thing too. I'm doing this great thing and I'm so glad that I know what my body's doing. I never realized that all of these things happen and they have a reason. Did you know this, kind of thing?
Right. Well, and that is actually a great place to start the conversation, because and you've probably experienced this too, but when my husband and I have taught couples NFP, the first thing we talk about is really just kind of how the body works. It's kind of more of a anatomy lesson before we even jump into the method. And I just, the last couple that we taught, they were just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I had no idea this was how it all worked. This is so cool.
Right.
And then they were both just like so excited, and they're like, yeah, let's keep going. We want to learn more.
Right.
And that, I mean, that's a great, just like secular place to start too. If you're, if maybe it's a friend who's not religious but you want to share NFP with them, it's like, hey, I'm learning some amazing things about my body that I had no idea existed. Can I tell you about them?
Right.
Well, not
I think
like
that's
my
a
body,
great
but
place
like,
to start.
can I tell you about what you could learn?
Yes. Again, you've done a great job answering the question. So I think that, as long as you're approaching it where the friendship is,
Yes.
and feeling confident and comfortable to be able to do that. And it's beautiful too, that sometimes, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
You're fine.
I think it's beautiful too that there are so many couples that approach you, even when you're teaching it, outside of just your circle of friends, that are amazed by, what they're learning. I had a young couple that we taught that was like, I was speaking to my friend about it and they had no idea what the white period was. So she was able to explain to them what that mucus,
wow.
all that kind of thing. Yes. So she was able to do that and bring it to her. So it does have this ripple effect eventually of, if we get the word out there more and more, and talk about, what we know to be true, and share it with enthusiasm, rather than this is what the church teaches and we need to follow what the church teaches. All of that is true, but it eliminates, by just that approach, it eliminates, again, the science that we have, that NFP can offer better than other methods, and the mystery and the beauty of creation that this method offers, that is stripped away with other methods.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I think a common theme that I feel like I've heard in this whole conversation is just leaving the door open for conversation. And I think that's key just in any time talking about NFP, in talking with your kids about it, just leaving that door open, talking with your friends about it is, you might say, hey, I'm learning this fantastic thing and it's really cool. And your friend might be like, no, I'm not interested at all. And that's fine. But you've opened the door and you can leave it open for the rest of your friendship with that person, right? For the rest of your life, really. If they ever come back to you and are like, wait, what was that thing you were talking about? I'm kind of interested.
Right. And then there's so many opportunities with social media, et cetera, where you could just put it out there too. And if people wanted to ask questions, they could do that without it being a face-to-face kind of, okay, we just killed it and the conversation's done by saying those kinds of things,
Yeah. Well,
and anybody can approach you.
Yeah. I'm thinking on Instagram, I might do this on my stories, but on your stories, you can just put an ask me anything. And like, how fun would it be to just, hey, have you heard about NFP? Ask me whatever you want. I'm happy to answer questions. Like,
beautiful.
Yes.
Yes.
That'd be beautiful. That'd be such a cool thing to do.
Right. And then people feel comfortable enough to come to you. And there's great things out there that, they have now that they didn't have before. Mother-daughter sessions where mother-daughters come together for a tea and the young ladies learn about, NFP with a group of other young ladies, and the mothers get together and are able to support each other and really to talk about the dangers that are out there, as well as the opportunities for more understanding and books and materials so that you can strengthen each other through it. So there's great programs out there, and I encourage people to try and find what'll work best for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fantastic advice. Well, Peggy, this has been so much fun. I feel like I learned so much. I'm excited for my daughter to grow up and just to have this ongoing theology of the body conversation with her and look into some of those other resources you mentioned. And I will put links to some of those resources that Peggy mentioned in the show notes. So please go look there if you're interested in some of these books and things for children and young adults. But Peggy, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ellen, for doing this. I think it's awesome.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Peggy. Be sure to check out the show notes where I linked out a lot of those resources that we were talking about. And if you haven't already, go and find us on Instagram at Charting Toward Intimacy. We love hearing from our listeners and can't wait to hear from you. Next episode in 2 weeks is going to be very exciting. We are bringing back Yolanda, who was in one of our first episodes and who we also mentioned earlier in this episode. And Yolanda and I have a great conversation and share some awesome tips about talking to your doctor about natural family planning. So be sure to check out that episode, and we'll see you next time.